Welcome, everyone. This is Renee Canale, founder of Cultivating Change, LLC in Rockville, Maryland, and the head change cultivator at landofpossibility.com. We're here tonight coming from Village Connector Media in Laurel, Maryland. Village Connector Media is the People's Prosperity Network. Village Connector Media is the hub of numerous initiatives with the whole purpose being bringing people together to develop their talents and to bring their talents back out into the world. We're here tonight with Donna Gallagher, who is the founder of Warrior Women Arise and a chief dream catcher as well, and Brenda Stevens, who is the founder of Sunflower Health and Wellness. We're going to share with you tonight how several people did come together and how when they came together, they broke ground, grew, and benefited many. So let me set the stage for you. Last year I spoke at the Warrior Women Wellness Weekend, which was hosted by Donna. And during my presentation, I had asked for a volunteer. Well, I needed somebody to help me demonstrate that money does have energy. And Brenda Stevens volunteered to help, not really understanding what she was getting herself into. So tonight, we'd like to share the rest of the story with you. Donna, could you start by telling us a little bit about Warrior Women Arise?
Sure, I'd love to, and thanks Renee, and hi Brenda. Nice to be with both of you. So Warrior Women Arise is really a movement, it's not a meeting, and it's all about amazing women such as the two of you that are brave, bold, and beautiful, but sometimes have to learn to fight for themselves despite their obstacles.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about the whole Warrior Women weekend?
Well, you know, I meet a lot of women, and oftentimes they're overwhelmed, they're overworked. You know, as women, we pour ourselves into everything, our family, our friends, our jobs, you know, and sometimes we wake up and we're like, who am I? There's nothing left. I kind of feel lost and disconnected. And as I talked to different women, and that resonated with so many of them, they felt like, what happened to my dreams? Who am I, and what do I do with the rest of my life now that, you know, my kids are growing up and all of that kind of thing? And so through that, I founded Warrior Women Arise, and one of the ways we help is through this 2.5-day Women's Wellness and Empowerment Weekend. It's a time where several great speakers like yourself, Renee, come together, and attendees like Brenda, and we really learn from each other and really collaborate and expand our minds and learn things that we didn't even know we didn't know.
Yes, that's correct. That's my story.
Ah, and you know, that's my story too. On my website, I describe myself as straddling the line all the time. What are you supposed to do with your life, and what are you expected to do with your life? So it resonates with me as well.
Yeah, it resonates with a lot of women, and that's really kind of where the story begins at our conference last year. But before we get to the conference, we need to talk a little bit about what was going on leading up to the conference with both of you, because you both have a really interesting story. So Brenda, let's start with you, because I know that you really wanted to be there, but you had some things going on in your life and you weren't sure you're going to be able to make it. Kind of tell us what was going on leading up to that.
Well, the conference was in November, and I was going through a very, very challenging time with my children and some transitioning time for myself. Thinking about becoming a clinical aromatherapist and finishing that process and getting the certification, and I was on a deadline that I had to complete it by 2014.
Right.
And at that point, I had a lot of work to do and a research paper. But it was my dream. It was my goal to complete that, and I wanted to put my energies into that. I was also having some financial difficulties, and even though I had signed up for the conference and said that I would be there and support it and be there with the most amazing women that I've met in a very long time, it was still financially a huge struggle for me.
I remember that.
And Donna and I talked, and she made a way for me to be there and found me a roommate. And so my expenses were cut in half, and I was able to attend. But even with that, it was still a very, very challenging time for me in my life.
And Renee, you were one of our speakers, but you have an interesting story, because I know that when you and I first spoke about speaking, you were really excited and you really wanted to be there, and then we agreed and you went on the agenda, and then something happened. Tell us what happened.
Yes. Well, after meeting you and understanding that the two of us have a passion for helping people in this lost space, I was really excited to be a speaker at your event. Not really even understanding what to expect myself, but I was just really open to it. And not too long after I had committed to you, I found out that an event that I had committed to previously had been rescheduled for the exact same weekend.
I know.
And that event was in Florida. So my story was, the decision that I needed to make was not which one that I was going to be at. I knew I needed to be at both. One of them was going to help me develop my business and my business foundation.
Right.
And Warrior Women really was going to feed my personal side and help me learn more things about myself among people that I knew that were going to be supportive of me. So I went down Friday morning to Florida. Saturday morning, very early, I was flying back up the coast, up to the Baltimore area, out near the coast, to speak at your event.
Right.
And 20 minutes after I finished my presentation, I was back in the car to the airport to go back to Florida. And by the time that I got there, I was headed for bed so that I could wake up and finish my event.
It was amazing. I actually had released you from speaking, but you were so intuitively committed and felt so strongly to be there that you went through all of that. But as the story unfolds, we realize that there really was a reason that you needed to be at that event. And you had really never met Brenda before, because as you said, you breezed in from Florida, were there to do your talk and had to leave right after. But a lot happened in that little bit of time, and that's really what we want to talk about tonight. So you had mentioned earlier that you needed a volunteer. It was your turn to speak, and you started out by asking for a volunteer. So why don't you pick it up and you and Brenda tell the story, because it's great.
Well, I'd like to back up just a tiny bit.
Okay.
When I first arrived, the women were having lunch, and they were doing a discovery walk outside.
Right.
So I really didn't get to even say hello to anybody beforehand. But I did notice one person, a very wonderful woman, that was sitting quietly at a picnic table as I went in to see you. And that happened to be the only place that I could sit when everybody converged again, was right next to the same woman. And when I asked for a volunteer, I needed a volunteer to help me demonstrate that money does have energy.
Right.
And it was critical to the presentation for the women there to really understand that part of the presentation, and I wanted it to be engaging and real. And Brenda was the one that volunteered quickly and didn't really know what she was getting into.
She sure didn't. So Brenda, back to you. So you volunteer very willingly, and Renee calls you up in front of all of the women, and she says to you she's going to give you something, And if you choose to accept it, you make a commitment to do what she asks you to do with it.
Correct.
So what happens?
Well, she's right. She sat next to me, and I thought, well, she's just coming in. I can volunteer. That's all right. I felt comfortable with the women that were there, and she didn't give me any clues as to what I was going to have to do, except for when we got up together. That's when she gave me the instructions. But just willingly, I said, I'll be a volunteer, no problem.
And that's when I handed you a very large denomination bill
Yes,
and asked you to rip it.
absolutely.
And do it quickly because I had a limited amount of time to do the presentation. What was going on?
So before you answer that, let me just say, I remember vividly you're standing up there and listening to those instructions as she's asking you to rip this large denomination bill in many small pieces, and you could see on your face you did not want to do that. You were
Absolutely
almost
not.
paralyzed, and you could see the struggle. This internal struggle was very visible, and a lot was going on inside. And
Right.
you know, it wasn't really even your money to begin with. So
Right.
why was it so hard? Tell us what was happening.
Well, it was a $50 bill for one. I picked it up, looked at the light, saw the strip inside, so I knew it was real. And I could not believe that someone would allow me to tear up their $50 bill. And just thinking of the financial struggles that I have had, and seeing the money and thinking, this is impossible. I've never even written on money before. I've never crunched it up. I've never thrown it away. And I most certainly would not tear it up. But I heard the instructions. She repeated them again. I was asked if I would do them. I said yes, I would. And I stood there and I tore it up. And I felt terrible.
Well, and if I could, just for a minute, there was a hesitation. You looked at me and asked if you could renegotiate, if there was any way that you could change the commitment that you made. Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yes.
And there seemed to be almost some fear, like you were holding it tightly. Like, can you talk a little bit to that? Like, were you afraid? I know money was tight, you had said.
Yes.
What was going on in that realm, in that dimension?
Well, I felt the tightness. I felt it in my neck. I felt it in my head. I felt so constricted at that moment that I couldn't even, think of opening up my hands to tear it. Everything just felt so tight. And I remember thinking, could I give this job to somebody else? But that wasn't part of the agreement. I was going to have to keep my part of the agreement to tear it up. And then all of a sudden, I just thought, just let it go. Release. Just tear it up. And
Important words, let it go, release. So Renee, you're kind of directing the show at this point, and you're watching Brenda struggle, and you know what's going on from an energetic point of view, but talk to us a little bit about, why this was so important and why you were somewhat relentless about letting her not get out of her commitment.
Well, one of the points that I really needed to make, and her demonstration definitely made that point, is that we all have some kind of a fear or a belief about money.
True.
And that is the energy that money has for us. And in Brenda's case, she had a conflict going on. She had a core belief or a core value that you respect money, that you keep your commitments. But then she had a belief of some sort, and you could probably tell us better what it is, but I'm thinking that your belief was that money's hard to make. if you have it, you deserve it, and you know you might never get it back if you let it go. Is that close to what?
Yes, and you value it. You would keep it. You would not get rid of it, especially if it was a gift, if someone gave it to you, and even if you earned it yourself, you would keep the money. You would not tear it up.
Mm-hmm. What happened after you let it go, though?
Well, initially, I would say it probably took me about 45 minutes to an hour to feel calmer.
Like you had released it.
Yes, I still felt the tightness. I mean, I can still feel it to this day. But I would say over time, I began to understand the energy, the power of money, the flow of money, the giving, the receiving, the getting, the letting go of it, and not letting it have that type of power, because I felt at the conference it had a tremendous power. And going forward, I said, I do not want it to have that kind of power in my life again.
That was a really transformational, awesome breakthrough, and we were all so proud of you.
Yes, and I knew with you standing right next to me and shaking and struggling and really torn about how to go through with this decision, but determined to make that decision, that everybody in the room understood that money does have power.
Absolutely.
And your bravery and your courage when your warrior came out really was a catalyst, I think, for everybody, including me, because I'm standing next to you and I'm responsible for what happens in that interaction.
Right.
And I was just totally blown away by how quickly you handled that. And even though you needed time to recover, and we spent some time kind of processing as well, you made a very determined decision. And I think you understand that your core values are stronger than some of your beliefs, which is extremely important to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was definitely one of the more powerful and poignant moments of the whole weekend. We had many, but that one, I think everybody just focused on that and just they were with you in that moment, almost struggling with you, because I'm sure you weren't the only one in that room that had the same struggle, the same need to hold on and have to process through letting go. But that's only half of the story.
It is.
The real exciting part of the story is yet to come, and we want to tell all of our listeners and viewers what's happened since then. So the rest of the weekend happened, and it was great, and lots of other great speakers and all of that, and we agreed that we'd have a 6-month reunion because everyone wanted to see everyone again and find out what had happened and all that kind of good stuff. So fast forward 6 months later, we have a group of the women come for this little reunion, and I hadn't really talked to you much in the interim, and you come bounding in and you're all aglow and you cannot wait until it's your turn to share what's happened in just those few short months. So tell us what happened.
Well, that was a humongous catalyst for me. And Renee and I did do some more talking about it and looking at some of my values about money, looking at my views about money and where some of those values and views came from. And so it was a little bit of soul searching after the retreat. And since that time, I completed my clinical aromatherapy certification. And that began the wheels turning in my head about how will I use that now that I have it. And I am going to use it in a business that I'm going to start in the fall, Sunflower Health and Wellness Consultants. And that has begun a fantastic journey for me in a very short period of time.
Okay, so You just kind of went through that very nonchalantly, but let's go back and really focus in on the huge difference of what has happened from you standing in that stage,
Yes.
like paralyzed and gripped with this fear of letting go of $50,
Right.
to giving your resignation where you're an RN in a family practice, getting your aromatherapy certification,
Right.
deciding to start your own company,
Mhm.
signing a lease on a facility for
Right.
your wellness practice, hiring some employees, working with the SBA
Yeah.
to develop a business plan and funds and loans, and you're opening in October.
October.
And you're a semi-finalist
Yes.
in the Start Right business plan competition, which is
Yes.
something that the Maryland Women Business Center sponsors. And that's like in less 6 months.
6
I mean,
months or less.
unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Just such a transformation and a breakthrough. So, Renee, what is your take on all this? You were kind of one of the catalysts in all this as well.
Well, you know, Brenda is an example of why I find events like this to be so powerful. Because when you are in an environment of people that want to support and trust each other, and that really want to make a difference in their own lives,
Yes.
magic just happens. And when you invited me to come to speak, I just I knew that I wanted to be there because transformation happens where like-minded people are together.
That's true.
So being there at the event and experiencing such bravery, I really didn't expect your reaction, Brenda, and it really solidified for me the power that we have when we work together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I felt that from the women that were there. I felt empowered by the women who were there. I was so impressed by some of the things that they have accomplished. And that began, I believe, the seeds for me to see if they can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely.
If I can get over some of these hurdles, then the possibilities are there for me. And I have seen them just snowball in such a very short period of time. And so for me, that moment, I would also say I was embarrassed to be standing there almost in tears in front of these women too. But that moment of bravery became such a huge moment of accomplishment later on. And so I was very thankful for it, still very thankful for that moment.
And you're actually coming back to this year's Warrior Women
Yes, I
Empowerment and
am.
Wellness Retreat.
Yes,
So
I
that's
am.
good news. I can't wait to see what happens this year. And Renee, you're going to be speaking again along with 7 other very powerful women. So talk to us a little bit about that. Your topic this year is Where Energy Flows, Money Grows, and that sounds pretty exciting.
Well, it's really nice that you're going to be there because that, again, begins the demonstration that when you consciously decide how you're going to use your money and you challenge some of those things that kind of keep you feeling lost, stuck, overwhelmed, really in dire straits, that as soon as you get to that decision point and you let go of those kinds of things, everything starts happening for you. And for you, it was so huge that you had such a big, turnaround. I'm really looking forward to a personal transformation because I am able, even though the event that I went to last year is no longer being held, a new one is in its place, and it is the same weekend. I will be at Warrior Women, the empowerment weekend, because I want to experience 2.5 days of wonderful women being brave and bold and beautiful.
And that's really
Awesome.
what Warrior Women is all about. You know, every woman has her own unique gifts, her own unique calling and destiny, and we really have a mission to help women uncover that, to rediscover it, to really own it. And you're an example, Brenda, of how you've really come into your own as a result of so many different things that happened throughout that weekend and then thereafter. So I'm excited both of you are coming back. I can't wait to see what's going to happen this year.
Well, you know, I hope that the people that are joining us, watching and listening to how Brenda's story came about and how much it's touched everyone that was involved in that event, I hope they see that what can happen when you take time to invest in yourselves and really open up to the great possibilities that are out there. And we never know what those possibilities are.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you just a little sneak preview. So this year's Warrior Women Arise weekend is November 14th to 16th. It's in a beautiful place close to where we live in Maryland called the Inn at Harrington Harbor. And I'm going to be speaking on the power of perspective, the power of purpose, and the power of possibility. And I can already feel the power, no pun intended, of the weekend as it's all coming together. So Brenda, just think of what might not have happened if you didn't come. And so I want to encourage our viewers to consider coming. To learn more about this November event, visit the website at www.warrior-women.net, and you can learn all the details and register there as well.
So I want everybody to stay tuned because there's a special bonus to this video. We are all going to hang around and tell you a little bit more about ourselves individually in case you want to take this next step. Be brave, be bold, and be beautiful.
And fight for yourself.